Grandpa told me I deserved better after my mom tried making me raise her seventh kid. So I moved out with my grandparents, but she called the cops on me and this happened. People say you don't get to choose your family. I guess that's true, but I was lucky enough to be raised by the ones I would have picked anyway. My name's Liam. I'm 18, and I grew up in a small, freezing town in northern Michigan, the kind of place where the snow doesn't melt until May and everyone knows what time your porch light goes off. My parents had me when they were still kids themselves, 16, and barely speaking to each other unless it was to argue or lie. They lived in my grandparents' house, coasting through life while I got handed off like a backpack nobody wanted to carry. But my grandparents? They were the real deal. We called them Coach and Missy. Coach was a retired gym teacher with forearms like tree trunks and a voice that could shake windows, even when he was just asking if I wanted pancakes. He didn't yell, though, not unless it was game day or someone messed with the circular saw. His garage was more than a garage. It was a sanctuary. Tools lined the walls in perfect order. There was always a project going, a birdhouse, a boat motor, once even a canoe made out of leftover fencing. He let me help with everything, even when I was too young to be useful. He'd hand me a level or some nails and say, "What do you think, buddy? Look straight to you." It wasn't just about building stuff. It was about time, being seen. I was never in his way. I was part of it. Missy ran the inside like a general wrapped in a warm blanket. She always had something cooking: casseroles, cookies, chili that could make you forget your last name, and she never, not once, made me feel like I was a burden. We'd sit at the kitchen table with mugs of hot cocoa or that weird cinnamon tea she loved, and she'd ask about my day like it actually mattered. If I got a bad grade, she didn't scold. She'd just say, "All right, what went sideways here?" And we'd figure it out together. Meanwhile, my parents treated parenting like a side quest they never had time for. Mom slept till noon and went out with her friends at night. Dad spent his time either glued to video games or sulking around the house with earbuds in. They were under the same roof, but never in the same room for long. When they did show up, it was usually to argue about money or blame each other for something dumb, like who forgot to buy milk. I remember being 5 and asking Mom if she wanted to help me paint the birdhouse Coach and I had built. She glanced up from her phone and said, "Maybe later, babe." That was her catchphrase. Maybe later. She still hasn't gotten around to it. I learned pretty fast not to bother, not because I was scared of them, but because they made it so clear they didn't want to be bothered. I wasn't their kid so much as their obligation, a side effect. But Coach and Missy? They made me feel like I was the reason they got up in the morning. Missy would say, "You keep us young, kiddo." And Coach would wink and call me his little apprentice. I believed him. I can still smell that garage, motor oil and cedar. I can still hear Missy's voice telling me, "You've got a good head on your shoulders, Liam. Don't let anyone twist it the wrong way." For a while, that house was my whole world. Safe, predictable, full of love I didn't have to earn. I thought it would always be like that. But it wasn't. Everything changed the day my parents decided they were ready to be independent. Turns out, that meant dragging me away from the only people who had ever really raised me. And nothing was ever safe again after that. When I was 6, my parents packed us up in the middle of a freezing November and moved us into a crumbling duplex near the industrial part of town. No warning, no real goodbye. Just a bag of clothes, some cereal boxes, and a mattress tossed into the back of Dad's buddy's truck. They called it getting our own place, like it was some kind of victory. Like walking away from the only home I'd ever known made them grown-ups all of a sudden. "We just need our own space," Mom told Missy, who stood on the porch in her bathrobe, clutching a Tupperware of leftovers she'd made for the road. Coach stood behind her, stone still, his jaw tight enough to crack a cinder block. I looked back at them through the truck window, and even then, I knew I was leaving something good behind, something I wasn't gonna get back. The new place smelled like mildew and stale fries. The windows had plastic taped over them to keep the cold out, and the floors sloped just enough that toy cars rolled downhill on their own. I was told I'd be sleeping on the pull-out couch until we could figure something out. That something never got figured out. 2 weeks later, Mom announced she was pregnant again. "You're gonna be a big brother," she said, like I should be thrilled. And for a minute, I was. I had no idea what it really meant, but it didn't take long to find out. When my baby brother, who I started calling Screamer, showed up, everything changed. He cried nonstop. Not the cute hiccuping kind, either. He wailed like he was being torn apart from the inside, all day and all night. Mom stopped doing anything but napping or texting on the couch. Dad turned the volume up on the TV so loud I couldn't hear myself think. Screamer cried. I rocked him, changed him, fed him whatever was warm and liquid. I was 6 years old and heating formula on a dirty stove while Dad yelled at the lions through the TV screen. I remember one night, I was trying to help the baby fall asleep, and I dropped the bottle. It rolled under the couch, and I couldn't reach it. I asked Mom if she could help. She didn't even look up from her phone. "Figure it out," she said. So I did. I shoved a spatula under the couch until I could hook it and drag it back. I cleaned the bottle with the same dish sponge Dad had used earlier to wipe beer off the floor. Then I fed the baby and rocked him again. That's when it clicked. This wasn't temporary. This wasn't a phase. This was the new normal. At school, I started falling asleep during math. I couldn't concentrate. I smelled like formula and stale milk. My teacher asked if everything was okay at home. I told her, "We're just really busy." The worst part? Whenever I said I was tired or asked why I couldn't go see Coach and Missy more often, Mom would roll her eyes and say, "God, you're so selfish, Liam." Or, "We all make sacrifices. Welcome to life, Dad." He just said I should be grateful I had a roof over my head. Then he'd ask if I could grab him another soda. Eventually, it stopped being weird. It just was. I got good at making bottles, cleaning up puke, and keeping Screamer quiet so Mom could nap. I started finishing homework on the floor while rocking a car seat with my foot. I learned not to ask questions, not to complain. I was no longer a kid. I was the help, and no one ever said thank you. Not once. By the time I was 16, there were 6 of them. 6 younger siblings, each one more chaotic than the last. And every single one of them was my responsibility. It started slow. After Screamer came Breaker, named unofficially by me after he shattered a snow globe on his own face and didn't even flinch. Then came Echo, who only spoke by repeating whatever someone else had just said. Then twins, Spit and Shadow. Spit had a constant string of drool and 0 volume control. Shadow clung to me so much that if I shut a door, she'd sit outside it until I opened it again. Finally came the baby, still too new to have a nickname, but loud enough to already earn one. My parents, meanwhile, got lazier. Mom spent her days online, glued to whatever multi-level marketing scheme she was pretending to care about that month. One day it was essential oils. The next it was crystal healing parties. Dad worked part-time at a junkyard and full-time on the couch watching sports, complaining about his bad back from lifting too many engines. Most nights, he'd yell at me to microwave something for dinner, usually a frozen lasagna that I'd have to cut up into bite-sized pieces for the rest of the crew. "Dinner's ready." I'd call from the kitchen. "Is it hot all the way through?" Mom would yell back without getting up. "Figure it out," Dad would add, cracking open another beer. Some nights I didn't eat until 9 because the twins took forever to settle down. I'd scarf something cold and sit on the porch just to hear myself breathe. Outings were the worst. Mom loved dragging us to Walmart or the park when she wanted to get out of the house, which meant I was in charge of making sure nobody wandered off or set something on fire. I remember a grocery trip where Breaker opened an entire box of cereal and dumped it down an aisle. While I was cleaning it up with paper towels, Spit peed through his pants into the shopping cart seat. Mom was off in cosmetics, live streaming a makeup tutorial from her phone. People stared, like I was the dad, like these were my kids. I wanted to tell them, I didn't make this mess. I'm just the poor sucker cleaning it up. At school, my teachers noticed. One pulled me aside after class and asked why I'd bombed 3 tests in a row. "Are things okay at home?" she said gently. I shrugged. "We're just stretched. Is there anything you need?" "Yeah, sleep, peace, a meal where I'm not cutting someone else's food." But I smiled and said, "I'm good," because that's what I always said. I tried to have a social life. Once, I made friends with a kid named Alex, who invited me over to hang out. When I asked Mom if I could go, she rolled her eyes and said, "So who's going to take care of the baby while I have my bath?" Dad chimed in, "Don't be selfish, Liam. Family comes first." They said that a lot. Family comes first, right before dumping another diaper into my hands. I still remember the night I was supposed to go to homecoming. I had borrowed a shirt from Paul, my older cousin, the only person in the world who treated me like I mattered. And I was so hyped, I actually did my hair. 30 minutes before my ride showed up, Mom handed me a Target bag of baby wipes and said, "Plans changed. The twins have pink eye, and I'm going out with Krista." I didn't argue, just changed back into a hoodie and rocked a screaming toddler in the living room while the other kids ran circles in their underwear. Later that night, I scrolled through pictures on Instagram of everyone at the dance, and I felt this ache I couldn't shake. Not anger, not sadness, just hollow. I wasn't living a life. I was just surviving other people's. And the part that scared me most, I didn't know how to stop. The night everything shifted started with another broken promise. I was supposed to go to this birthday party. Not mine, obviously, but a friend's from school. First time in months I'd been invited to something that wasn't just bring your siblings and try to keep them alive. I'd saved up $20 from helping Coach clean out the gutters just to buy a gift card. I'd even ironed my shirt. That's how serious I was. Mom knew. I reminded her 3 times that week. "I need Saturday night free. It's really important." She nodded, texting the whole time. Yeah. "I got you, babe." But an hour before I was supposed to leave, she came out of the bathroom wrapped in a towel, scrolling on her phone, and said, "Change of plans. I've got a thing with the girls tonight. You'll have to skip the party." I blinked at her. "You said you'd be home." She shrugged. "Plans change. You know how it is. Don't start." I looked over at Dad, who was watching TV with a plate of nachos on his stomach. "Can't you stay?" I asked him. He didn't even look up. "Nope. Got the game on." "Don't be dramatic." That was when the baby started screaming in the other room. It was always the same cycle. I'd make plans. They'd dump everything on me. I'd miss out. They'd act like I was the crazy one for being upset. But this time, someone else saw it. Because 5 minutes later, the door opened without a knock. It was Paul, my cousin, 25, tattooed, and walked like he didn't give a single damn what anyone thought. I hadn't told him about the party. Hadn't told him I wasn't going. But he showed up anyway. "Yo," he said, stepping into the living room. "You ready to go?" Mom stared at him. "What?" Paul looked at me, then at the diaper bag still hanging from my shoulder. "You're kidding, right?" I felt my throat tighten. "They said I can't go. Mom has plans." Paul turned to her, his voice calm but sharp. "You told him he could." You made a promise. Mom rolled her eyes. I don't need to be lectured, Paul. Maybe not, but you do need to be honest. He gestured toward me. You treat him like he's your backup generator. He's a kid, not a damn appliance. Dad shifted on the couch. Hey, you don't get to come in here and talk to us like, no, you don't get to call what you're doing parenting. Paul's voice didn't rise, but it hit like a punch. You've got 6 kids, but Liam's the only one acting like an adult. You should be embarrassed. Silence. Heavy, hot, dangerous. Paul turned to me. Let's go. I hesitated, just long enough to see Mom open her mouth and then shut it again. Then I followed him out the door. That night, I didn't just go to a party. I got to be a teenager. Paul bought me a burger on the way home and told me flat out, none of this is your fault, man. You're not crazy. They're just broken. I wanted to cry. I didn't, but I wanted to. Paul didn't treat me like a tool or a live-in nanny. He talked to me like a person, like someone who deserved better. And for the first time in my life, I started to believe him. By 16, I wasn't even surprised anymore when something got taken from me. A day off, a weekend, a chance. It had all become expected, but nothing hit like the tech camp. I'd been working toward it all year. Coach helped me fill out the application. Missy proofread my essay. I stayed up late on school nights, teaching myself Python and basic circuitry in the glow of the busted Chromebook I borrowed from school. When I got accepted, I didn't even tell my parents at first. I was scared they'd ruin it before I had the chance to feel proud. The program was in Ann Arbor, 3 weeks, paid tuition, with weekend sessions Coach promised to drive me to. When I finally told Mom and Dad, I did it like I was presenting a tray of eggshells. Careful, quiet. Mom blinked. That's great, babe. But who's gonna watch the kids while you're gone? I wouldn't be gone. It's just weekends. Paul said he can cover Saturdays. Coach and Missy too. Dad waved a hand. You know your cousin likes to run his mouth. He says a lot of things. Doesn't mean he'll show up. I already asked. He said he's in. I just need you guys to be okay with it. Dad reached for the remote. Sorry, not happening. It's not the right time. Not the right time. That was his favorite excuse. He used it for everything. Not the right time to visit your grandparents. Not the right time to apply for a job. Not the right time to dream. That night, I sat on the back steps and stared out at the cracked driveway, thinking about everything I wasn't allowed to want. Coach called me and tried to keep me from falling apart. You didn't do anything wrong, Liam. This isn't on you. But it felt like it was. Every missed chance felt like my fault. Like I should have tried harder. Should have snuck out. Should have fought. Things at school were starting to unravel. I fell asleep in class 3 times in a week. My physics teacher called me in after school. You look exhausted, Liam. I'm just busy. Your grades are slipping. I'll fix it. Do you want me to call home? No. God, no. Because if someone asked questions, my parents would lie. They always did. He's obsessed with video games. He stays up all night on his phone. He's just lazy. They weren't lazy, though. Not when it came to spinning the story. They worked real hard at that. My school counselor started noticing too. She called me in and asked about extracurriculars. I said I didn't have time. She frowned. Asked why. I just said, family stuff. But the real breaking point wasn't school. It was home. One night, I came home from work, bagging groceries at the corner store until closing, and found my bedroom door gone. Not just open, gone. In its place was a plastic baby gate and a crib pushed against the wall where my desk used to be. Mom was bouncing the newborn on her hip, smiling like she'd done something great. We needed the space. You don't mind sleeping in the living room, do you? I didn't answer. I couldn't. My body moved before my mouth could. I turned, walked back outside, sat down on the curb, and just stared at the road. Not crying, not yelling, just gone. Somewhere inside me, something cracked, and this time it didn't grow back. The next day, they announced baby number 7. I was in the middle of folding laundry. Shadow was asleep on the couch, using my hoodie as a blanket. Mom came in, holding a pregnancy test like it was a trophy. Guess what? I didn't answer. She grinned. You're gonna be a big brother again. And right there, surrounded by piles of other people's clothes, no bed to call my own, and a future that kept shrinking, I finally understood. This would never stop. There would always be another baby, another excuse, another reason I couldn't live, unless I broke the cycle myself. And that night, for the first time ever, I picked up my phone. I didn't call Mom. I didn't call Dad. I called Coach. When Coach answered, I didn't even say hi. I just whispered, they did it again. Can I come home? He didn't ask what I meant. He didn't need details. He just said, we're on our way. Missy was in the background, asking, is he packed? Is he hurt? 30 minutes later, headlights swept across the driveway. I was already standing outside with my backpack, just the essentials. A pair of jeans, my school binder, the phone charger Paul bought me, and the folder with my tech camp acceptance letter I couldn't bring myself to throw away. Coach didn't knock. He walked straight through the front door like he owned the place. His voice was cold steel. Liam's leaving. He's not coming back. Mom was halfway through a bowl of popcorn on the couch, wearing pajama pants and a stretched-out hoodie. You can't just barge in here like this. Coach didn't even blink. I just did. Dad stood up, shirtless, squinting like someone had turned on the sun. He lives here. You can't take him. He's a minor, Missy added, stepping inside with her arms crossed. And we've got records of every call, every email, every school letter, every time you've dumped your responsibilities on him. Mom laughed like she was auditioning for a sitcom. You're being dramatic. He's part of this family. No, I said, stepping forward. I'm not. That shut her up. I didn't even look at my siblings. I couldn't. The baby was crying again. Screamer was tossing Legos across the floor. Breaker was yelling something about pancakes. I just walked out. Coach opened the car door for me like it was the most natural thing in the world. I slid in and didn't look back. It took less than 24 hours for the storm to start. First came the voicemails. Mom, you don't just run away from your family. That's not how this works. Dad, you've made your mother cry. Is that what you wanted? Then came the texts. Mom, if you don't come home, we're calling the cops. Dad, this is kidnapping. Mom, do you really want us to go to court over this? You'll lose. Mom, you're breaking this family apart. None of it hit the way they wanted. I wasn't scared. I was tired. And more than that, I was done. 2 days later, the police showed up at Coach and Missy's house. Twice. Both times, I answered the door myself. Both times, the officers were polite and tired looking. Are you Liam? Yes, sir. You want to be here? Yes, sir. They glanced over at Coach. Then Missy looked at the file folders stacked neatly by the door. Okay then, one of them said, you're fine. Let us know if they keep harassing you. That was it. No drama. No sirens. Just quiet confirmation that I had the right to leave, that they couldn't drag me back. Coach started collecting everything after that. Emails, screenshots, school notes, even the fake apology text Mom sent after she realized the threats weren't working. Missy labeled every folder, every envelope, every bit of proof. They want a war, she said. Let's give them one. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't alone in the fight. I was safe, but the battle wasn't over yet. Not even close. Missy didn't play around when it came to paperwork. Within 3 days, she had everything sorted into color-coded folders. One for school records, one for health forms, and one labeled simply neglect. Coach took photos of the old house, crumbled drywall, for kids sleeping on a single mattress, dirty dishes stacked like Tetris in the sink. Then they made the call. Child Protective Services came the following week. 2 women in button coats and quiet shoes. They sat at Coach and Missy's dining room table while I told them everything. I didn't cry. I didn't even fidget. I just said it like I'd been rehearsing the truth my whole life. I took care of the baby. I did night feedings, changed diapers, cleaned up vomit. I wasn't allowed to go to school events or have friends over. I didn't have a door. They nodded, wrote it all down, asked careful, slow questions. When did the caretaking begin? When I was 6. Were you ever paid? No. Were your parents home? Yeah. They just didn't participate. The woman closest to me blinked a little harder than usual at that one. She stopped writing for a second. A few days later, they visited my parents' house. That's when things started breaking apart. Mom called me first, sounding half panicked, half offended. You reported us? What the hell is wrong with you? Coach took the phone. Say one more word to him, and we file for full custody of every minor in that house. She hung up. The caseworker told us later that the house was borderline uninhabitable. There were crumbs in every crib, a strong smell of bleach in the air, but only in the bathroom, like someone had tried to fake cleanliness on short notice. Kids were barefoot on stained carpet. The twins ran into the wall 3 times during the visit. Breaker bit a plastic fork in half. Dad insisted everything was fine. He actually said, kids are tough. They don't need much. When they asked who was the primary caregiver, both parents said, Liam, mostly. Like it was normal. Like they didn't just admit to offloading their kids onto a teenager. Then came the interviews with the kids. Echo parroted, Liam makes dinner. Shadow whispered, he brushes my teeth. Screamer, now 7, shrugged and said, Mom sleeps a lot. Liam does the school stuff. The CPS agent told Missy it was one of the clearest cut cases of emotional neglect she'd ever seen. Within 2 weeks, the findings came back. Parental negligence, inappropriate delegation of care, emotional endangerment. Boom. Suddenly, everything changed. Mandatory parenting classes were ordered. Weekly CPS check-ins. Court-mandated paid child care at their expense. Supervised visits only. No kids left alone in the house with mom or dad, ever. And the best part? They were not allowed to contact me unless I agreed. Coach framed that notice and hung it in the garage. Paul stopped by the next day with a victory pizza and a 6-pack of root beer. Told you, didn't I? You're not crazy. You were just raised in a messed up system. Missy put her hand on my shoulder. We can't fix what happened, sweetheart, but we can stop it from happening again. It was the first time I truly exhaled in months. My parents didn't lose custody, but they lost control. Their gravy train had stopped running. For the first time ever, someone else had said what I'd always known. This wasn't parenting. It was survival. And I was the only one doing the work. Not anymore. The quiet hit me first. No crying at 3 a.m. No cereal bowls left in the sink for me to clean. No shrieking toddlers knocking over the laundry basket before school. Just silence. It didn't feel empty. It felt like air after you've been holding your breath for 10 years. Coach gave me the guest room, fresh sheets, real pillows, and a door that locked. The first night, I slept for 10 hours. Missy cried when she saw me come to breakfast without bags under my eyes. I haven't seen you look this rested since you were 5, she said, handing me a mug of tea. I smiled. For real this time. I think I forgot what mornings were supposed to feel like. Within weeks, my grades bounced back. Teachers started writing notes on my assignments again. Great insight, Liam, and nice recovery from a rough quarter. My school counselor stopped looking at me with pity and started helping me plan out the future. The tech camp? Still on. Coach called them himself. Explained the situation. They were happy to push my spot to the spring session. Your recommendation was one of the strongest we got. The program coordinator told me on the phone. We're glad you're coming. And now I finally would. Coach even got me a part-time job at his friend's repair shop. Nothing big, oil changes, brake pads, intake forms, but it felt good. My name on a schedule, my own paycheck. I used the first one to buy Missy her favorite cinnamon tea and a tool organizer for Coach's garage. At school, people started talking to me again. Not like, hey, can you cover for me in lab? But like a real person. A girl named Ava from Trig's study group started sitting next to me at lunch. She asked if I liked coffee. I said I didn't know. I'd never had time to try it hot. She brought me a cup the next day. It was bitter and perfect. Even the kids back at my parents' house started noticing the shift. Breaker apparently threw a full tantrum during one of the supervised visits because Liam's not here and Dad won't stop yelling. Echo asked where I'd gone. Shadow cried when I didn't show up for a visit and refused to get in the car for 3 hours. The illusion cracked. Mom tried to spin it like always. He needed space, she told them. He's busy with school. But kids aren't dumb. They knew. They remembered who used to brush their hair and who used to scroll on her phone. Aunt Loretta tried to start her usual narrative at a family thing. You know, your parents were just trying their best. They're old-fashioned, that's all. Paul shut her down instantly. No, Loretta. They used Liam like a substitute parent for 10 years. There's nothing loving about that. I didn't even have to speak. He did it for me. One night, Coach and I sat outside in the backyard, legs kicked up on a milk crate, just watching the stars blink into view. You thinking about college yet? He asked, handing me a pen and a notepad. I'm working on an essay, I said. What's it called? I looked down at the paper and read the title out loud. Breaking Inheritance. Missy came out with Coco and a smile. That one's gonna win awards. I smiled too. The kind that starts in your chest and works its way up. For the first time in my life, I felt like a kid again, right before becoming the man I chose to be.